3 weeks. That's how long Tom had been in his new house, and he was still finding boxes he'd forgotten to unpack. The place on Oakwood Lane was perfect, though. Nice backyard, quiet street, and finally enough space to breathe after years in a cramped apartment downtown. It was Friday evening, and Tom was exhausted from another week of settling in. He'd been planning a camping trip with his buddies for months, and it was coming up next weekend. The problem was he'd bought all this new camping gear and had no idea if he even knew how to set it up. The last thing he wanted was to look like an idiot in front of his friends, struggling with tent poles while they all watched. So he grabbed his dog's leash and called out to Rocky, his golden retriever. "Come on, boy. We're camping tonight." Rocky's tail started wagging like crazy. That dog loved anything that involved being outside. Tom dragged the tent bag out to the backyard and got to work. It took him about 40 minutes and maybe a few choice words, but eventually the tent was standing. It wasn't pretty, but it was up. He threw a sleeping bag inside, set up a small camping chair, and cracked open a cold drink. Rocky was already sniffing around the tent, trying to figure out what this new thing was. The backyard wasn't visible from the street at all. There was a tall fence on one side and trees on the other. Tom wasn't bothering anyone. He was just a guy testing out his gear in his own yard, planning to sleep out there one night with his dog before the real trip. He'd barely sat down in the chair when the doorbell rang. Actually, it didn't just ring. Someone was pressing it over and over like the house was on fire. Tom walked through to the front door, confused about who'd be visiting him. He didn't really know anyone in the neighborhood yet. When he opened the door, there stood a woman who looked like she'd just witnessed a crime. She was probably in her late 50s, wearing a polo shirt and khaki pants like she was heading to a golf course. Her face was red, and she was clutching her phone in one hand and a huge binder in the other. "Are you the new owner?" she demanded before Tom could even say hello. Yeah. "I'm Tom. Can I help you with something?" "I'm Linda Pemberton. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association for this neighborhood." She said it like she was announcing she was the Queen of England. "I need to speak with you about a serious violation that's occurring on your property right now." Tom blinked. "A violation? I just moved in. What are you talking about?" Linda held up her phone, and Tom could see she'd taken a photo. It took him a second to realize what it was. She'd apparently walked around to the side of his house and photographed his backyard through a gap in the fence. "This," she said, jabbing her finger at the screen. "This temporary structure is in direct violation of our community standards. Section 12. Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that no temporary structures are permitted on residential properties without prior written approval from the Architectural Review Committee." Tom stared at her. "That's a camping tent. In my backyard. I'm testing it out for a trip next week." "I don't care what your intentions are," Linda snapped. "The rules are the rules. You need to remove it immediately. It's just for tonight. It's not hurting anyone. You can't even see it from the street." Linda's face got even redder. "That's not the point. We have standards in this neighborhood. If we let one person put up tents, then what's next? Storage sheds? Mobile homes? The property values will plummet." Tom tried to keep his cool. "Look, I didn't get any HOA information when I bought the house. Nobody told me about any of these rules. And honestly, it's my backyard. I should be able to camp in it for one night if I want to." "Ignorance of the rules is not an excuse," Linda said, opening her binder. She flipped through pages of printed documents, though she didn't actually show Tom any of them. "You should have received a welcome packet. That's not my problem if you didn't read it. The tent needs to come down within the next hour, or I'll be forced to take action." "What kind of action?" Tom asked, starting to get annoyed now. "I'll report you to the proper authorities. This is a legal issue. You're in violation of a binding contract you agreed to when you purchased this property." "I never signed anything about an HOA." Linda's eyes narrowed. "It's part of your deed restrictions. Whether you read them or not, you're bound by them. 1 hour, or I'm calling the police." Tom couldn't believe what he was hearing. "The police? For a camping tent? In my own yard?" 1 hour, Linda repeated. Then she turned on her heel and marched back toward her car, which was parked in his driveway like she owned the place. Tom stood there for a moment, completely bewildered. He'd dealt with difficult people before, but this was something else. He went back inside and tried to figure out what to do. Part of him wanted to just ignore her. What were the odds she'd actually call the cops over a tent? But then he thought about it more. He'd just bought this house. He didn't want problems with the neighborhood right off the bat. Maybe there really were rules he didn't know about. He pulled out his closing documents and started searching through them for anything about an HOA. 30 minutes later, he'd been through everything twice. There was nothing. No HOA agreement, no bylaws, no mention of any homeowners association at all. His real estate agent had been thorough. If there was an HOA, it would have been disclosed. Tom was starting to think this Linda person was just someone who liked to boss people around. But before he could decide what to do, the doorbell rang again. He figured she was back to hassle him some more. When he opened the door, Linda was standing there with her phone held up in front of her like a weapon. "Your hour is up," she announced. "I can see from here that the structure is still standing. I'm calling 911 right now." "Wait, 911 is for emergencies." "This isn't an emergency. This is an emergency to me and to the standards of this community." Linda was already dialing. "I'm reporting an illegal structure and suspicious activity on a residential property." Tom watched in complete disbelief as she put the phone to her ear. She was really doing this. She was really calling 911 because he had a camping tent in his backyard. "Yes. Hello, I need to report a situation," Linda said into the phone, her voice suddenly taking on a dramatic, concerned tone. "There's an illegal structure that's been erected on a property in my neighborhood, and the owner is refusing to remove it. I'm the HOA president, and I'm very concerned about what might be going on there." "The behavior seems suspicious," Tom tried to interrupt. "That's not true. Tell them it's just a camping tent." Linda held up one finger to silence him, turning away as she continued talking to the dispatcher. "Yes, it's at 847 Oakwood Lane. I've asked him repeatedly to remove it, and he's become hostile." "I don't feel safe. I'm not hostile," Tom said, but Linda was already walking away, still talking on the phone. Rocky had come to the door and was sitting next to Tom, looking up at him like he was wondering what all the fuss was about. Tom reached down and patted his head. "This is insane, buddy," he muttered. "Absolutely insane." He went back inside to wait, figuring the police would show up, see that there was nothing wrong, and leave. How big of a deal could this really be? It was just a misunderstanding with a pushy neighbor who took herself way too seriously. But as Tom sat there on his couch with Rocky beside him, he had no idea that this ridiculous situation with a camping tent was about to turn into something much bigger, something that would completely change the power dynamic on Oakwood Lane forever. Tom didn't have to wait long. About 15 minutes after Linda made her call, he heard car doors shutting outside. He looked through the window and saw a police cruiser parked on the street. 2 officers were getting out, and Linda was already speed-walking toward them from her house across the street. Tom took a deep breath and headed outside. This was embarrassing, but at least the cops would see how ridiculous this whole thing was, and it would be over. The 2 officers were standing on the sidewalk, and Linda was already talking at them a mile a minute. One officer was older, maybe mid-40s with gray at his temples. The other was younger, probably early 30s. Both of them had that professional but tired look that cops get when they've been dealing with complaints all day. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," Linda was saying. "I'm Linda Pemberton, the HOA president for this street. This is a very serious situation. The new owner of that property has erected an illegal structure and is refusing to comply with our community regulations." Tom walked up, and the older officer turned to him. "Sir, are you the homeowner here?" "Yeah, I'm Tom. I live here." "Look, I can explain all this." "He's trying to claim it's just a camping tent," Linda interrupted, "but that's irrelevant. Our HOA bylaws strictly prohibit temporary structures of any kind without proper approval." The younger officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, let's let him speak." "Sir, can you tell us what's going on?" Tom gestured toward his backyard. "I bought this house 3 weeks ago. Tonight I set up a camping tent in my backyard because I'm going on a camping trip next weekend and wanted to make sure I knew how to put it together. That's it. That's the whole story. It's just me and my dog testing out a tent." The older officer, whose name tag read Davis, looked at Linda. "A camping tent? That's what this is about?" "It doesn't matter what kind of structure it is," Linda insisted. "We have rules in this neighborhood. Rules that everyone has to follow. If we don't enforce them, the entire community falls apart." Officer Davis looked like he was trying very hard to be patient. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this isn't really a police matter. This is a civil issue between you and your neighbor." "It absolutely is a police matter," Linda shot back. "He's violating legally binding deed restrictions. That's a violation of contract law. The younger officer, Martinez, according to his badge, turned to Tom. Did you receive any HOA documents when you purchased the property? No, Tom said. I went through all my closing paperwork after she came to my door the first time. There's nothing about an HOA. My real estate agent was really thorough. If there was one, I would have been told about it. Linda's face was getting red again. That's impossible. Everyone on this street is part of the HOA. It's been established since the neighborhood was built. Officer Davis pulled out a small notebook. Okay, let's take a step back. Ma'am, do you have documentation showing that this property is part of your HOA? Linda clutched her binder tighter. I have all the bylaws right here. That's not what I asked. Do you have documentation proving that this specific property, 847 Oakwood Lane, is legally bound to your HOA? Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. She flipped through her binder, looking annoyed. I don't carry the master deed with me everywhere I go. But I know for a fact that every house on this street is part of it. He agreed to it when he bought the house. If it's not in his closing documents, then he didn't agree to anything, Officer Martinez said. Tom was starting to feel a little better about this. The officers clearly weren't on Linda's side. Officer Davis turned back to Tom. Sir, is the tent visible from the street or causing any kind of disturbance? No, it's in my backyard. You can't see it at all from the front. I'm literally just sleeping out there tonight with my dog. Is it a permanent structure? No, I can take it down in like 10 minutes. It's a camping tent. Officer Davis nodded and closed his notebook. He turned to Linda. Ma'am, I'm going to be straight with you. You called 911, which is for emergencies, to report a camping tent in someone's backyard. That's not an appropriate use of emergency services. Linda's eyes went wide. Excuse me? I have every right to call the police when someone is breaking the law. But no law is being broken here, Officer Martinez said. This is a private property issue, and even if there is an HOA, that's a civil matter. You should be handling this through your HOA board, not calling 911. I am the HOA board, Linda snapped. Then you should know that this isn't a criminal matter, Officer Davis said. His tone was still professional, but Tom could hear a hint of frustration creeping in. Filing a false police report or misusing 911 for non-emergencies can result in charges. That got Linda's attention. Are you threatening me? No, ma'am, I'm informing you of the law. What I'm telling you is that if someone puts up a tent in their backyard, that's not a reason to call 911. If you continue to call emergency services for things like this, there could be consequences. Linda looked like she was about to explode. Her face was bright red now and her hands were shaking. This is unbelievable. I call you to enforce the rules of this neighborhood and instead you're taking his side. What kind of police work is this? We're not taking anyone's side, Officer Martinez said calmly. We're just telling you that this isn't a police matter. I want to speak to your supervisor. I'm going to file a complaint about both of you. You're not doing your jobs. Officer Davis looked at Tom. Sir, are you feeling threatened or harassed by this situation? Tom hesitated. He didn't want to make this worse, but honestly, yeah, he was feeling harassed. Linda had come to his house, demanded he take down his tent, threatened him, and then called the cops with some exaggerated story about suspicious activity. Kind of, yeah, Tom admitted. I just wanted to camp in my backyard. She's been taking pictures of my property and making threats. Officer Davis handed Tom a card. I'd recommend you document everything that's happened. Take photos, keep any written communication. If this continues, you might want to consider filing a harassment complaint. Linda made a sound like a tea kettle. Harassment? I'm the one being harassed. He's the one breaking the rules. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to calm down, Officer Martinez said firmly. We've explained the situation. This is not a police matter. If you believe there's an HOA violation, you need to handle it through proper civil channels, not by calling 911. Fine, Linda spat. Fine, I'll handle this myself. But you two will be hearing from my lawyer and your supervisors. This is completely unacceptable. She stormed off toward her house, still clutching her binder and phone. Officer Davis watched her go, then turned back to Tom. Sorry about all this. Look, I don't know what the deal is with your HOA situation, but my advice? Get everything in writing. If she keeps bothering you, document it. And definitely look into whether you actually agreed to any HOA terms when you bought the place. I will. Thanks for being reasonable about this. No problem. Have a good night. Enjoy your camping trip. The officers got back in their cruiser and drove off. Tom stood there for a moment watching Linda's house. She was visible through her front window, pacing back and forth, probably on the phone with someone. Tom went back inside and poured himself another drink. Rocky was waiting by the back door, probably wondering when they were going to go back to the tent. "Give me a minute, buddy," Tom said. "I need to make a phone call first." He found the number for Kate, the real estate agent who'd helped him buy the house. She'd been great through the whole process, super thorough and professional. If anyone would know about this HOA situation, it would be her. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Hey, Tom. How's the new house?" "Hey, Kate, house is great, but I've got a weird situation. Did you know anything about an HOA for this neighborhood?" "An HOA? No, there wasn't anything in the disclosures. Why?" Tom explained the whole situation with Linda, the tent, and the police visit. When he finished, Kate was quiet for a second. "That's really strange," she finally said. "I pulled all the title documents and I'm looking at them right now on my computer. There's no HOA agreement attached to your property. If there was, it would have shown up in the title search and we would have had to disclose it before closing. So this Linda person is just making stuff up?" "I don't know if she's making it up, but whatever HOA she thinks exists, your property isn't legally part of it. At least not according to your deed. Look, I can give you the number for the attorney who handled your closing. Her name is Rebecca Chen and she's really good. She'll be able to tell you exactly where you stand legally." "That would be great." "Thanks, Kate." "No problem. And Tom, document everything this woman does. If she's harassing you, you might need a paper trail." Tom hung up and immediately called the attorney. He got her voicemail because it was Friday evening, but he left a detailed message explaining the situation and asking her to call him back as soon as possible. Then he grabbed a beer, called Rocky, and headed back out to the tent. He wasn't going to let some angry neighbor ruin his night. He'd paid good money for this house, and if he wanted to sleep in a tent in his own backyard, that's exactly what he was going to do. As he settled into his sleeping bag with Rocky curled up next to him, Tom could see lights on in Linda's house across the way. She was probably still fuming, plotting whatever her next move was going to be. What Tom didn't know yet was that Saturday morning came with Rocky licking Tom's face at around 7. Tom had actually slept pretty well in the tent, despite everything that had happened the night before. He packed up the gear, feeling satisfied that at least he'd figured out how to work it before his camping trip. He was making coffee when his phone rang. It was Rebecca Chen, the real estate attorney. "Tom, I got your message. Sorry I missed your call last night. Tell me what's going on." Tom went through the whole story again while his coffee brewed. The tent, Linda, the HOA claims, the police visit, all of it. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Okay, give me an hour. I'm going to pull up your title documents and do some digging. This doesn't sound right to me. Kate said there was nothing about an HOA in the paperwork. She's right, there wasn't. But I want to check something else. I'll call you back." Tom spent the next hour cleaning up the backyard and trying not to think about Linda. He kept glancing over at her house, half expecting her to come marching over again. But her car was gone. She was probably out spreading rumors about him to the other neighbors. When Rebecca called back, she sounded excited. "Tom, you're not going to believe what I found. Can you come by my office? I think you're going to want to see this in person." An hour later, Tom was sitting in Rebecca's office downtown, and she had documents spread out all over her desk. She looked like a detective who'd just cracked a big case. "Okay, so here's what I found," she started, pulling out a printed sheet. "When I did your title search before closing, I noted that there was no active HOA on record. But after your call, I decided to dig deeper into the history." She pulled out another document. Oakwood Lane was developed in 1976 by a company called Pinewood Developments. They did establish an HOA back then. Standard stuff for the time. Monthly dues, basic rules about lawn maintenance and house colors, that kind of thing. So there was an HOA. Was is the key word. Here's where it gets interesting. In 2010, the HOA failed to file their annual paperwork with the state. They also stopped paying their registration fees. According to state law, if an HOA doesn't maintain its corporate status, it automatically dissolves after 2 years of non-compliance. Tom leaned forward. "So the HOA dissolved?" 15 years ago, Rebecca confirmed. "It hasn't legally existed since 2012. But here's the thing. Nobody really noticed or cared. Small neighborhoods like this, sometimes the HOA is just a few neighbors who get together once in a while. When it dissolved, people probably just kept doing what they were doing. So Linda has been running an HOA that doesn't actually exist? Rebecca smiled. It gets better. I found records showing that someone, presumably Linda based on what you've told me, has been collecting HOA dues from at least 6 households on your street. $200 a month per house, Tom did the quick math. That's over $14,000 a year. For an organization that doesn't legally exist. She's been collecting money and enforcing rules under false pretenses. That could be fraud. Tom sat back in his chair. This was way bigger than he'd thought. So what do I do? Rebecca held up a finger. Hold on, I'm not done. Remember how I said I wanted to check something else? I started looking at the property records for the neighborhood infrastructure. The street itself, Oakwood Lane, do you know who owns it? The city? That's what I thought too, but no. Oakwood Lane is a private road. When Pinewood Developments built the neighborhood, they kept the road private. The idea was that the HOA would maintain it with the dues they collected. But when the HOA dissolved, ownership of the road became unclear. Tom wasn't sure where this was going, but Rebecca's eyes were practically glowing. I tracked the ownership chain, she continued, pulling out more papers. Pinewood Developments went bankrupt in 1994. Their assets were supposed to be sold off, but some things fell through the cracks. The road was one of them. It's been sitting in this weird legal limbo for 30 years. The county has it listed as an abandoned private asset. What does that mean? Rebecca pulled out her laptop and turned it around to show Tom a website. It was the county's tax auction page. It means that because no one has paid maintenance assessments or property taxes on it, the county is auctioning it off. And not just the road. There are also several common areas that were part of the original development. Little green spaces, some easements, and here's the kicker. Some of the driveways in the neighborhood cross property lines. Your property line, actually. Tom looked at the screen. Sure enough, there was a listing for Oakwood Lane private road and associated easements. Wait, you're saying I could buy the street? You could buy the street, and you'd also own certain access rights that cross your property to reach other properties, including one very specific driveway that belongs to 852 Oakwood Lane. Tom looked up. That's Linda's address, Rebecca grinned. That's Linda's address. Her driveway, the part that leads to her garage, crosses about 6 feet of what would be your property. Right now there's an assumed easement because of the old HOA. But if that HOA doesn't exist, and you own the access rights, well, she'd need your permission to use your property. Tom's mind was racing. When's the auction? Rebecca looked at her watch. It's online and it starts at 7 tonight. The opening bid is $2,500 to cover back taxes and administrative fees. I've been checking the listing all morning. No one else has shown any interest because nobody knows it exists. Exactly. These kinds of abandoned assets, they fly under the radar. Most people don't even know to look for them. I only found it because I knew what I was looking for. Tom thought about it. $2,500 wasn't cheap, but it wasn't crazy either. And the idea of owning the street, especially after Linda had been such a nightmare, was incredibly appealing. What would I actually be able to do if I bought it? Rebecca pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Well, as the owner of a private road, you'd have the right to control access. You'd need to allow reasonable access for residents to reach their homes, but you could set rules. You could require permission for certain uses. And for any properties that need to cross your land to reach their garages or driveways, you could restrict that access if they don't have a properly documented easement, which Linda doesn't have. The old HOA easements died with the HOA. Everything would need to be reestablished. Tom felt a smile spreading across his face. So theoretically, I could block her driveway. Theoretically, yes. But Tom, I need to be clear about something. You can't just do this to be petty, or to get revenge. There are laws about spite fences and malicious conduct. But if you have a legitimate reason, like say someone has been harassing you, filing false police reports and illegally collecting money under false pretenses, then you'd have grounds to protect yourself and your property. She did all those things. I know, and that's why this could work. But we'd need to do it right. If you buy this property, I'll draft all the necessary documents. We'll send official notices to all the residents. We'll establish clear rules that are fair and reasonable. And for Linda specifically, we'll offer her a path to getting a proper easement, but only if she agrees to certain conditions. Tom looked at the auction listing again. The street he lived on. His street. He could actually own it. What do I need to do? Rebecca pulled up the auction site and started walking him through the registration process. First, you need to register for the auction. Then you'll need to have payment ready. If you win, you'll need to transfer the funds within 24 hours. After that, we file all the paperwork with the county, and you become the official owner. They spent the next hour going over all the details. Rebecca explained everything that would happen after the purchase, all the legal steps they'd need to take. She also pulled up the property maps and showed Tom exactly what he'd be buying: the road itself, a few small green spaces that nobody really used, and most importantly, those easements. One more thing, Rebecca said as Tom was getting ready to leave. That money Linda's been collecting? The fake HOA dues? You should know that's potentially a crime. Fraud, theft by deception, possibly more. The people who've been paying her could file complaints. Should I tell them? Not yet. Let's get through tonight first. If you win this auction, we'll have more leverage. Then we can decide how to handle Linda and her fake HOA. Tom left the office feeling like he'd stepped into some kind of alternate reality. This morning, he'd woken up in a tent, annoyed about a pushy neighbor. Now he was potentially about to buy the street he lived on. He spent the afternoon getting his payment information ready and researching everything he could about private roads and easements. The more he learned, the more he realized how perfect this situation was. At 6:45, he opened his laptop and logged into the county auction site. Rebecca had told him to call her right before it started, so he dialed her number. "You ready?" she asked. "I think so. I'm nervous." "Don't be. Remember, if someone else bids, don't get into a bidding war. We can find other ways to handle Linda. But I've been monitoring it all day and there's been zero activity." "Okay. It starts in 10 minutes. I'll stay on the line with you. Let's do this." Tom watched the clock count down. At 7 exactly, the auction opened. The starting bid was listed as $2,500. Tom transferred the money first thing Sunday morning. $2,500 for a street. It still felt surreal. Rebecca had called him before he even finished his coffee, already working on all the legal documents they'd need. "The county confirmed receipt of your payment," she told him. "They're processing everything now. We should have the deed by Monday afternoon. In the meantime, I've drafted letters for all the residents on Oakwood Lane." "What do the letters say?" "Just the facts. That the street is under new private ownership, that reasonable access will be maintained for all residents, and that anyone with questions can contact my office. Very straightforward, nothing aggressive. We want to be completely by the book on this." "What about Linda?" Rebecca paused. "Her letter is a little different. I'm including a notice about the easement issue, basically informing her that her driveway crosses private property and that the previous easement agreement is no longer valid. She'll need to contact us to establish a new access agreement." Tom felt a flutter of nervousness. She's going to lose her mind. Probably. But everything we're doing is legal and justified. She's been harassing you, she's been running a fake HOA, and she filed a false police report. You have every right to protect yourself and your property. After he hung up, Tom decided to take Rocky for a walk around the neighborhood. He wanted to get a better sense of the street he now owned. It felt weird thinking of it that way. His street, his actual street. Oakwood Lane was about half a mile long with 20 houses total. Most of them were well maintained, with neat lawns and decent landscaping. It was a nice neighborhood, the kind of place where people probably knew each other and looked out for one another. Or at least they would if Linda wasn't terrorizing everyone with her fake HOA. As Tom walked, he noticed Linda's house. It was the biggest one on the street with a large front yard and an even bigger backyard. Her driveway ran along the side of the property, leading to a garage in the back. Tom pulled out his phone and looked at the property map Rebecca had sent him. Sure enough, about 6 feet of Linda's driveway crossed what was technically his property line. It was a narrow strip, but it was enough. Without access across that section, she couldn't reach her garage. She'd have to park on the street and walk around to her front door every time. Tom felt a little guilty thinking about blocking her access, but then he remembered how she'd barged onto his property, taken pictures without permission, threatened him, and called 911 over a camping tent. The guilt faded pretty quickly. Monday morning, Rebecca called with good news. "It's official. The deed is recorded. You are now the owner of Oakwood Lane and all associated easements. I'm having the letters sent out today by certified mail. Everyone will have them by Wednesday." "What's next?" "Well, we need to put up proper signage noting that it's a private road. We also need to establish clear access rules. I've drafted a basic agreement that allows all residents reasonable access to their properties. It's fair, it's legal, And it protects you from any claims that you're blocking people maliciously. And Linda, I'm sending her letter separately with the easement notice. I'm also including a formal request that she cease all HOA activities and return any dues she's collected under false pretenses. If she doesn't respond appropriately, we can pursue legal action. You really think she's going to cooperate? Rebecca laughed. No, but we have to give her the chance. That's how this works. We follow every rule, we document everything. And when she inevitably refuses to cooperate, we have the legal high ground. So what happens when she refuses? Then we install a barrier at your property line where her driveway crosses. A simple lockable bollard would do it. It's removable, it's not permanent, and it's completely within your rights as a property owner. Tom thought about that image. Linda pulling up to her driveway and finding a bollard blocking her way. It was almost too perfect. Tuesday afternoon, Tom was working from home when he saw the mail truck stop at Linda's house. The driver had one of those large envelopes that required a signature. Tom watched from his window as Linda came out, signed for it, and went back inside. His own mailbox also had certified letters for the other neighbors. Tom had been dreading this part. He didn't want everyone on the street to hate him. But when he read the letter Rebecca had drafted, he felt better. It was professional and clear. It explained the situation without making him sound like a villain. Wednesday morning, Tom's doorbell rang. He was half expecting Linda, but instead it was an older couple from 3 houses down. The man was probably in his 70s and the woman was carrying a plate of cookies. "Hi there," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Bill and this is my wife Joan. We got your letter yesterday." Tom shook his hand nervously. "Yeah, I'm sorry if it was confusing. There's been a situation with the HOA. Joan handed him the cookies. "Confusing? Honey, this is the best news we've had in years. Linda has been driving us crazy with her made-up rules and her constant fees. We've been paying her $200 a month for 5 years. Tom did the quick math. That's $12,000. Exactly, Bill said. And for what? The street doesn't look any better than it did before. We kept asking her for financial reports, where the money was going. And she'd just say it was all documented and none of our business. She told us we'd be fined if we didn't pay," Joan added. "Said she could put a lien on our house." Tom felt anger rising on behalf of his neighbors. She can't do that. The HOA doesn't even exist anymore. It dissolved 15 years ago. Bill and Joan looked at each other. "We knew something wasn't right," Bill said. "But we didn't know how to fight it." "Linda, she's a lot." "I know," Tom said. "Trust me, I know." They chatted for a few more minutes and Bill assured Tom that he had their full support. As they left, Joan turned back. "Whatever you're planning for Linda, we're behind you 100%. Over the next few hours, Tom had 3 more neighbors stop by. All of them had been paying Linda's fake HOA dues. All of them were relieved to find out they didn't have to anymore. And all of them had stories about Linda's harassment, threats about lawn height, complaints about car colors, demands about holiday decorations. She'd been terrorizing the whole street for years. By Wednesday evening, Tom felt like he'd accidentally become the neighborhood hero. But he knew the real test was still coming. Linda hadn't responded to the letter yet, and he had a feeling she wasn't going to go quietly. Thursday morning proved him right. Tom woke up to loud banging on his door. When he opened it, Linda was standing there with the letter in her hand, her face red with fury. "What is this?" she demanded, waving the paper. "What kind of scam are you trying to pull?" Tom stayed calm. "It's not a scam. It's a legal notice. The street is privately owned and your driveway crosses my property without a valid easement. This is my street. I've lived here for 20 years. It's actually my street now. I bought it from the county on Saturday. Everything in that letter is accurate and legal. You can check with the county recorder's office if you don't believe me." Linda's hands were shaking. "You can't do this. You can't just buy a street." "I can, and I did. The street was abandoned property and I purchased it at auction. It's all documented and legal. This is because of the tent, isn't it? You're trying to get back at me over a stupid tent." Tom took a breath. "This is because you harassed me, trespassed on my property, filed a false police report, and have been running an illegal HOA for years. I'm protecting myself and my neighbors." "Illegal?" "The HOA isn't illegal. The HOA doesn't exist. It dissolved in 2012 when someone, probably you, stopped filing the required paperwork. You've been collecting money from people under false pretenses. That's fraud." Linda's face went from red to white. You don't know what you're talking about. I have a lawyer who specializes in property law and I have all the documents. You can keep arguing with me or you can contact my attorney and we can work this out properly. Linda stood there for a moment, clearly trying to think of something to say. Finally, she turned and stormed back to her house. Tom watched her go, then called Rebecca. Linda just showed up. She's not happy. I didn't think she would be. Did she threaten you? Not directly, but she's definitely not going to cooperate. Okay, then we move to phase 2. I'll have a lockable bollard delivered to your house tomorrow. It'll install right at your property line where her driveway crosses. Once it's up, she won't be able to access her garage. Are you sure this is legal? Completely legal. You own the property and she doesn't have a valid easement. She has no legal right to cross your land without your permission. We've given her notice, we've offered to work with her, and she's refused. Now we protect your property rights. The bollard arrived Friday afternoon. It was a simple metal post with a lock mechanism, painted yellow so it was clearly visible. The installation company had it in the ground within an hour, right at the edge of Tom's property where Linda's driveway began its path to her garage. Tom stood in his yard, looking at the bollard. It seemed like such a small thing, but he knew it was going to cause a massive reaction. He didn't have to wait long. Linda came home around 6, probably from her weekly grocery shopping. Tom watched from his window as she pulled up to her driveway and saw the bollard. She sat in her car for a moment, then go. Tom met with Rebecca Monday morning to discuss Linda's offer to negotiate. He'd spent the weekend watching Linda park on the street and haul her belongings back and forth to her house. She'd tried to look dignified about it, but after the 4th or 5th trip carrying heavy bags, the dignity had started to wear thin. Her attorney sent over an initial proposal, Rebecca said, sliding a document across her desk. Basically, she wants you to grant her immediate easement access with no conditions. Tom looked at the proposal and laughed. After everything she's done, she just wants me to give her what she wants for free? That's what she's asking for, yes. Obviously, we're not agreeing to that. So what do we ask for? Rebecca pulled out a legal pad where she'd already made notes. Here's what I'm thinking. We offer her a permanent easement access, properly documented and recorded in exchange for several things. 1. A written apology to you and any other neighbors she's harassed. 2. She ceases all HOA activities immediately and publicly acknowledges that the HOA doesn't exist. 3. She returns all HOA dues collected in the past year to the neighbors who paid them. And 4. She pays for all legal fees associated with drafting and recording the proper easement. Tom considered it. What about the dues from before this year? Some people have been paying for 5 years or more. We could push for that too, but realistically, the longer we go back, the harder it becomes to prove. 1 year is reasonable and gives people some money back without dragging this out forever. Unless you want to pursue criminal fraud charges, but that's a whole different process. I don't want to send her to jail. I just want her to stop being terrible to everyone. Rebecca nodded. Then this is the way. We also include a clause that if she violates any of these terms, the easement becomes void and the bollard goes back up. That gives us enforcement power. What are the chances she agrees to this? Right now, she's parking on the street and walking to her house multiple times a day. She's got a 2-car garage she can't access. Her neighbors are all finding out she's been scamming them for years. I'd say her attorney is probably advising her pretty strongly to settle this. Rebecca sent the counter-proposal that afternoon. They asked for a response within 48 hours. Linda's response came in 24 hours. She rejected every term. Her counter-proposal was barely different from her original one. She'd grant Tom a mutual understanding about the property line and would consider scaling back her HOA activities. But she wouldn't apologize, wouldn't return any money, and wouldn't pay for the easement documentation. She's still not taking this seriously, Tom said when Rebecca called to tell him. I know, but that's okay. Time is on our side. Every day that bollard stays up, she gets more uncomfortable. Meanwhile, you're not being inconvenienced at all. What about the neighbors? They all know about the fake HOA now. Are any of them doing anything? Actually, yes. I got a call this morning from Bill, your neighbor down the street. He and 4 other families want to file a formal complaint with the state attorney general's office about the money Linda collected. They're also considering a small claims action to get their money back. Tom felt a surge of satisfaction. Good. She can't just steal from people and get away with it. Over the next week, things escalated. Linda tried parking in front of her house, but the street was narrow, and she kept blocking her neighbors' driveways. She got into arguments with 3 different people about it. One of them called a tow truck, which led to another police visit. The police were getting tired of being called to Oakwood Lane. Officer Davis actually stopped by Tom's house one evening just to talk. "Look," he said, "I don't usually get involved in civil disputes, but this is getting ridiculous. The whole street is talking about what Linda's been doing with the fake HOA. I've taken 4 calls in the past week, and every single one has been because of her. Is there any way to resolve this?" Tom explained the offer they'd made and Linda's refusal to accept reasonable terms. Officer Davis shook his head.
"She's making this way harder than it needs to be."
"Between you and me, I think she's embarrassed. She's been acting like she runs this neighborhood for years, and now everyone knows she's been basically making it up as she goes along. That's a hard pill to swallow. I get that, but she brought this on herself. I just wanted to camp in my backyard. I know. And for what it's worth, everyone on this street except Linda seems pretty happy with how things have turned out." "You planning to actually maintain the road?" "Yeah, Rebecca is helping me set up a basic maintenance fund. Voluntary contributions from the neighbors who want to help out. No mandates, no fake rules, just taking care of the street we all live on." Officer Davis smiled. "That's how it should be. Good luck with all this." By the end of the 2nd week, Tom noticed that Linda's car was gone for several days in a row. He asked Bill if he knew what was going on. "She's staying with her sister across town," Bill told him. "Apparently the walking back and forth was getting to her. Plus, I think she's avoiding the neighbors. Everyone's pretty angry about the money she took." "Has she responded to the complaint with the Attorney General?" "Not yet, but they're investigating. I talked to someone from that office last week, and they're taking it seriously. Apparently this isn't the first time they've seen something like this. Fake HOAs are more common than you'd think." 3 days later, Rebecca called Tom with news. "Linda's attorney just sent a new proposal. She's agreeing to most of our terms. Most? She'll issue a written apology, cease all HOA activities, and acknowledge that the HOA doesn't exist. She'll also pay for the easement documentation, but she's only willing to return 6 months of dues instead of a full year. And she wants the payback spread over 6 months instead of all at once." Tom thought about it. "What do you think?" "I think it's a reasonable compromise. She's probably not swimming in cash right now, especially if she has to pay back multiple families. 6 months of dues is better than nothing, and it gives people at least some of their money back. The important thing is she's agreeing to the apology and to stop the HOA nonsense. And if she doesn't follow through, then the easement is void and we're right back where we started. But this time we'll have a signed agreement showing she violated the terms. That makes any future legal action much easier." Tom agreed to the settlement. Rebecca drafted the final agreement and both sides signed it that Friday. The terms were clear. Linda would have access to her driveway again, but she had to hold up her end of the bargain. The written apology came first. Linda had to mail individual letters to Tom and to every neighbor she'd collected dues from. Tom's letter arrived on Monday. It was brief and clearly written through gritted teeth, but it was there in writing. She apologized for the misunderstanding about the HOA, for any inconvenience she'd caused, and acknowledged that she'd been operating under incorrect assumptions about the neighborhood rules. The same day, Linda sent an email to the neighborhood email list she'd been using for her HOA announcements. In it, she explained that after consulting with legal counsel, she'd learned that the HOA had actually dissolved years ago due to administrative issues. All neighborhood rules that had been in place were no longer enforceable. Anyone who had paid dues in the past 6 months would be receiving a refund over the next few months. Tom watched from his window as a moving truck pulled up to Linda's driveway that Wednesday. Linda was there directing the movers as they loaded up her car and a small trailer. She was moving out. Bill stopped by that evening with the news. "She's selling the house. Can't say I'm surprised. After everything that came out, I don't think she could face the neighborhood anymore." "I almost feel bad," Tom said. "I didn't mean to drive her out of her home." "Don't feel bad," Bill said firmly. "She was stealing from people. She was harassing everyone who didn't do exactly what she wanted. My wife was in tears one time because Linda threatened to fine us over our garden gnomes." "Garden gnomes, Tom?" "She said they violated community standards." Joan, who'd come over with Bill, nodded. "You didn't do this to her. She did it to herself. All you did was stand up to her when the rest of us were too afraid to." Over the next few weeks, life on Oakwood Lane settled into a new normal. Tom organized a neighborhood meeting to discuss the street maintenance fund. It was completely voluntary, and anyone who wanted to contribute could. They set up a simple system where people could donate whatever they felt was fair, and decisions about repairs or improvements would be made by group discussion, not by one person's arbitrary rules. The turnout was almost the entire street. People were excited to have actual input into their neighborhood. They voted on basic things like keeping the street clean and maintaining the common areas, but there were no rules about lawn height or paint colors or camping tents. Linda's house sold quickly. A young couple with a baby bought it. Tom met them the day they moved in and made sure to explain the whole situation, including the easement agreement and the fact that there was no HOA. They were thrilled. "We specifically looked for neighborhoods without HOAs," the wife said. "We just want to live our lives without someone telling us what color we can paint our front door." Tom's camping trip, the one that had started this whole mess, had been postponed during all the legal drama. But finally, 3 months after the tent, I